Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the Final Destination edition. My name is Michael Shantz. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. With me is Tom Stewart from Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
Tripping on acid and sipping on lattes.
Oh, that's great shit.
Yeah, that's the cokehead from Final Destination 2.
2. Yeah.
Who is the best character in the movie, despite the fact that it's not clear what drug he actually takes. Because he talks about taking acid. He is only seen taking coke, and yet behaviorally he is a stoner.
Right. That's fucking fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're here. We're talking about the Final Destination series. This is our mini-sode. We are going to rank them and declare them good or bad. I'm really interested in your thought process for this, Tom, because I was thinking about this. And for me, ranking them was about as difficult as trying to rank the Die Hard series, but for vastly different reasons. I really had, I had a sense of how much I wanted to get Die Hard right and not short shrift any one of those first 3 sequels.
Yes.
In this one, I don't really care.
Interesting.
I don't care as much as I did in the Die Hard series. But I found it just as difficult to rank these movies. So I just was wondering where you come out on that.
Well, I'm in agreement with the first part of what you said. That I found it difficult, but for exactly the same reasons as Die Hard.
Really?
I thought, with one notable exception, which we'll talk about later, these movies were really competitive.
Me too.
I was really taken with them, and I was so impressed because these movies are incredibly formulaic. You can set your watch by what happens in them.
Sure, but only in comparison to each other, not to anything else you've really ever seen.
Oh, that's certainly true. Yes. I have never seen this Grim Reaper. I've never seen a Grim Reaper based slasher before or since.
You're exactly.
But each of these movies, tonally and in the way that they handled the horror, was offered me something that was completely distinctive and enjoyable and impressive. And even when you got to the inevitable dud of the series, and I think we're finding out that there's no franchise of this length that can't have at least one dud in it, I was like, it's still a different flavor of shit.
Well, all right, let's do this, because I kind of want to start with good or bad first.
That's a really good approach.
Yeah,
I'm gonna just say one last thing about the series as a whole.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I think, quality aside, these movies work so well as sequels is, we've talked before about how horror movies can continue on simply by taking up the story of whoever survived the original.
Mm-hmm.
And that's baked into the formula of these movies. They're all about the people who survive.
Well,
whether it's the final girl or it's about people who, have survived the accident or survived the disaster.
Right, but self-contained in each single movie.
Right, yeah.
There's only one person that was in the original movie that's in any of the sequels.
Yeah.
And that's Ali Larter. She's in the first movie and the second movie. Everybody else, it's like we start from zero
And I
for
love
every single sequel.
and I love that too.
Yeah.
And also the fact the people on screen are talking about how there are so many coincidences going on. Whereas like
Yeah.
Whereas
yeah, I know.
I feel
it's amazing.
for the for in watching these movies, the sequels we've seen, their bread and butter is implausible coincidences.
Yeah,
So
right.
the characters on screen notice these coincidences far more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just watching them going, oh yeah, I guess that is a major coincidence. I wouldn't know because I'm watching a sequel.
And the exposition for them is always, to me, hilarious. It's always, I was looking online. I saw on TV. This happened somewhere else. These group of kids.
It's wonderful how I haven't seen the original, but I assume the original too. Tony Todd as Bloodworth
Oh man.
is Mr. Exposition for the
Yes.
first two and then the final movie, and in between
Right.
he's replaced by printouts from the internet.
Yeah, exactly. But you like in number 3, you have his voice. His voice is the voice as they're getting on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
So he's sort of always present,
Yeah,
even if he's not there.
that's right. That is right. Yeah, and one of the really
And I think it's funny that like the magical black man of these movies is the magical black man that brings the exposition of doom for the children.
yeah when when Candyman turns up, you're like, okay,
Yeah,
I know,
exactly.
I know where we're at now.
Right. And that's every time he appears on screen, that's the thought. That's the first thought I have is, oh, Candyman here.
It's
And it feels almost like they're leaning into that a little bit, aren't they?
yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, there's some very on the nose horror references,
Mm-hmm.
which when one of the characters is reading a Stephen King book, I'm thinking, was he involved in this? Is this just a straight up homage to a horror master? Or did he write something very similar and they're doing it in a please don't sue me kind of fashion? You never know with Stephen King. It's always one of those three possibilities.
Right. Well, I'd also suggest you never know with these movies. Good grief.
Well, the differences between them are what really makes it for me.
Uh-huh.
They've all got something original in their own right to offer.
Yes.
Even the categorically awful one.
Well, okay, let's get to
Yeah.
it, because I'm fascinated. I want to know which one you think is the categorically awful
Yes.
one. Which is it?
Well, no surprise given how pompous its title is. The Final Destination, I think, is dire.
Yeah, I agree.
But I
thought maybe you were gonna go to number 5.
no,
and,
I have
and we were gonna have a fight.
I have so much.
So I was
respect for that
worried.
movie. So much
Yeah.
respect.
I just watched that one last night.
Yeah, it is.
But to me, 4 is yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, do you think any of them are good?
oh yeah, I think all of them,
Okay.
but that movie are good.
Okay, so 2, 3, 5, you're saying are good,
Without
and
hesitation.
4 is bad.
Yes. I think 4 might have. I think if 4 was made at a time when they weren't trying to ram 3D down everyone's throats, I think it actually could have been okay. But as it is, it kind of dates in a way that only movies from a very small time period can, because they're so obsessed with basically advertising a technology
Right.
that is doomed to failure.
Right, yeah, I have to tell you, because one of my first notes for number 5 was, there's an obvious moment towards the beginning in the accident scene of that movie where, because I didn't know it was in 3D.
Right, same here.
And upon watching it, I mean, I have a note that says 3D question mark? Must be.
I also have that note, but much later on in the film. So my notes are totally skewed towards. Are they just?
But I didn't even.
Are they just saying the word 3D because 3D movies are popular, or are they actually in 3D?
Right, but I'm not sure I even picked up on number 4 being in 3D.
Yeah. Well,
was it The Final Destination? Was that a 3D movie?
Yeah, and I believe so was 5.
5 definitely was. Yeah. I wasn't sure about 4.
Yeah, 4. Well, 4 is weirdly and in a far more aggressive way. It is a 3D. It was a 3D movie, and you know, because I didn't know for sure, I spent the entire movie thinking through a number of possibilities about why the concept of 3D was so prevalent.
Yeah, right.
For some reason, I didn't think that. Of course, this is a movie made, you know, in was it 2010 or 2009, which is right in the meaty.
That's right in the sticky center for sure. The Final Destination is 2009. Yeah.
So I should have known, but
Final Destination 5 is 2011.
I spent the whole movie thinking that they were just trying to offer some cultural commentary.
Right.
And then, of course, when the movie ended and I looked it up, I was like, okay. I was like, okay, they're just a 3D movie. They're just bigging up themselves.
Yeah, and certainly you're not gonna. How much cultural commentary can your movie have when one of your characters is just labeled as MILF?
Well, yeah, and there are political problems throughout this franchise. They are the most egregious. The most egregious in The Final Destination.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an interesting one. It has all the other movies. I think they have some moments which make me think they're aware of how culturally explosive what they're talking about is. I never get that sense in The Final Destination at any point.
Sure. Well, so it's funny too because we've kind of referenced this a little bit, but you can only almost you almost have to look at these movies in a complete and total vacuum.
Yes.
As the Final Destination movies and compare them only with each other and not to any other film in the history of film. I mean, if I was going to, you've declared 2, 3, and 5 as good movies and 4 as a bad movie. If I was to take these movies against the history of cinema, I'd probably say all of them are bad movies.
Interesting.
But I enjoy these movies.
Yes, they are very enjoyable.
And I am of like mind with you. When I think of them in a vacuum, just compared with each other, I really like both 2, 3, and 5, or both 2 and 3. I don't like 4, and I liked 5. I really, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I had a great time. So I'm going to declare 2 and 3 as good, 4 bad, and 5 as good as well. And we're on the same page, my friend.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, it's another instance when having not seen both the original and any of these movies before really helped me because I genuinely did not know what to expect. And each time I started a new movie, I was genuinely pleasantly surprised about what I got, with the exception of 4. But I found 4 interesting enough to carry me through to 5.
Sure.
As diverting enough, even though it's a piece of garbage. But I genuinely don't think that about the other movies. It's the exception that proves the rule.
Me either. And these movies are sort of fascinating to me in and of themselves because they're, if you think of, say, the Hostel movies, which are kind of regarded as torture porn.
Yes. There's
an element to that in these movies, except it's accident porn, or It's you know,
It's the world's longest PSA for safety in the workplace.
yeah, totally.
No, I have exactly the same feeling about it. That it's accident porn. I just really enjoyed them,
Mm-hmm.
and especially having come. Well, we've just covered the last summer movies,
Right.
and they, there are echoes of definitely, in terms of genre and formula. There's definitely echoes there of the last summer movies, but so I was extra grateful that it didn't make any of those mistakes.
Sure. Yeah.
So when Final Destination 3 starts in a fairground and the main character is a photographer, and there's a lot of hooks again in 2. I don't know what was going on in the early 2000s where everyone had a hook fetish.
Yeah. Yeah, and the hook comes back in 5
Yeah,
for one death.
but this, I really appreciate the variety of
Mm-hmm.
that we're getting from these movies.
Well, you know what they are more than anything? Like, these movies are they're actually kind of they're Rube Goldberg death movies.
Yes.
That's what they really are. And I mean, it just seems like the silliest way to try to have teenagers die in a horror film.
Well,
But it's also so violent that these movies are just strange. I don't know how else to say it. They're just strange in the way the way they're built, and they're built unto themselves. They're like nothing else.
That's so true.
In the horror genre,
I think, well, that's it, and it's, that they each have a different strategy for dealing with such an absurd central concept. I mean,
Yeah.
this we'll talk about this, but to me, the second one goes full slapstick. It's the it's the Naked Gun sequel that was never made. The third one is, sort of, I think is trying to be a bit more subtle. And
If you say so.
approach horror as horror and trying to do something thematically with the idea that has nuance.
Mm-hmm.
4, is garbage. Is 4 is just like hick fodder to me.
Yeah.
It starts at a dirt racetrack. That says it all. And 5 is kind of like, it shifts between the two. Sometimes it's very, very full on comedy, almost sitcom like, and then
Right.
it's a particularly slapstick episode of The Office at times, and then at other times, it's genuinely compelling. The emotional questions it brings up are genuinely interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're right. There is nothing like these movies in cinema, and always the big joke, because I knew nothing about this franchise other than, I guess, the way people joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we cover a lot of movies like this. Superman 4, Jaws: The Revenge.
Sure.
I know those. I've seen those movies, but I also know them through the way that they were talked about culturally. As a national joke.
Right.
And the big joke here is, like, how can you have a movie called Final Destination that has 4 sequels?
Right. Yeah.
That's like the joke that's kind of set up for the late night talk show monologue.
Well, not just that, but you have one more sequel after a movie called The Final Destination. But you know what's amazing is, and obviously we'll talk about this when we get into that episode, but it's handled perfectly.
Yeah.
And the other thing about these, we've talked about titles before. Love the titles. There are no colons. There's no afterthoughts. It's Final Destination 2, then 3, then The Final Destination. then they decide to make one more, and they just go back to numbers, the Final Destination 5, as you should.
As you definitely,
And
they should never have said the Final Destination, because, I mean, I like it because it tells you all you need to know about, what a dick this movie is.
Yeah, right.
It's basically, it's a movie that goes around calling itself The Final Destination. It's set up for a big fall from the beginning, and that's exactly what
Right. That title is as big a dick as everybody in the movie, and the movie itself.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, but it's fun. You wouldn't know. I think from the outset you wouldn't know that one, unlike the joke about these movies, that they call it. How can it be a Final Destination if it keeps on going?
Right.
This franchise deserves to keep going more than many other franchises, which
Yes.
could legitimately go forward but shouldn't.
I would base that not only on obviously what we're going to start talking about in the episodes as we take on each movie, but financially. Every single one of these movies was a success.
Rightly so.
Usually when you get into what we're talking about on this podcast, the sequels, there's always, on a long enough timeline, every series will at some point shit the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it remarkable that this series hasn't.
Well,
this series was a success all the way through. There was an audience for these movies.
Well, I think it's remarkable in the abstract. When you actually get into the movies themselves, I can imagine myself as an audience member just coming out completely satisfied every time, because you don't have to think about what happens in the film. You know where it's going from moment one.
Mm-hmm.
It has such a rigid formula. And yet tonally, you get something completely different every time. So, I mean, Can you ask more of a sequel than that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Should we even bother doing these movies? No, because I have a lot to say. I have
plenty to say, but I remember seeing the first movie and thinking, that's a little fucking stupid, and I know for certain that I saw the second and the third movie in the theater, and then I stopped.
Interesting.
But I have a real connection with the third one, which we'll talk about. I'll save it for the episode.
Oh, interesting.
But I had, in watching the second one again, I couldn't really remember almost a single frame from it. I only remember, the only visual aspect of that movie I remembered was the logs falling off of the trailer onto the highway, and that's about it.
Mike.
So it was like watching it for a second time.
A man explodes,
again.
And an arm falls on a table.
I know.
And what you remember visually,
yes,
is some logs falling.
Yep.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know what to tell you. That's what stuck out to me.
There's a scene in this movie where a teenager gets crushed by a plane of glass.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember some logs falling.
It was good slow motion, Tom.
Yeah,
all right?
I mean,
good slow motion.
Maybe this movie is subtler than I gave it credit for, but I don't think so.
All right, let's end this. We got to rank them.
We got to rank.
Yeah, so we got to rank them. What's your ranking?
This is the hard part. Because like Die Hard, I think you could switch these. You could switch the first three around at will, and I wouldn't complain. But I'm gonna go 3, 5, 2, and then 4.
Holy
Are we simpatico?
We are.
Oh wow! You know.
I mean, exactly. I am 3, 5, 2, 4.
I nearly made a big point of putting 2 higher because of my sheer enjoyment of it, but I think you get so much more of what's good about both 2 and 3 in 5,
Mm-hmm.
that it made it a better movie for me. But it was really tight.
Well, at
really tight.
I think the reason I rank 5 so high is it did something that none of the other movies did at the end of the movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Which I really liked. So that tipped it for me.
Yeah, it's the I think 3 is the best all-round movie, so it was naturally for me going to be in the top of the pile. And I think I was just, you know how much I like Superman 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard for me not to give a full-on slapstick sequel its dues. And I am giving it its dues because I was saying it's a good movie.
We both are. And part of why I love 3 so much is this. I have a very personal story wrapped up in number 3, which we'll talk about. So
Are you James Wong?
I'm not.
Okay.
But that's another interesting thing about these movies where directors come and go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
you know, they repeat. You know, you had
it
original director coming back.
It very much feels like it feel I would disagree. I would disagree with this as a viewer, but it certainly feels like James Wong saw what they did to his idea in 2 and felt immediately like he had to total damage limitation, reverse the trend.
Right.
That's what that whole movie feels like. And because he is, I think, a very interesting director who's made some really interesting movies, a lot of them sequels. He completely knows just how to switch gears and
keep it interesting.
Keep it very interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was resentful, when I was after having watched Final Destination 2, I was resentful that there wasn't enough comedy in 3. But as it went on, I realized not only is this deliberate, it is genuinely thought-provoking, and it does horror and spectacle really well. Like, really well. Mm-hmm. So I just can't lower it because I like movies like Superman 3 and Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. I can't let that interfere with the ranking.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The mini-sode. Tom and I are exactly on the same page. We declare 2, 3, and 5 as good sequels, 4 as the bad sequel. We rank them 3, 5, 2, 4.
Yep.
All right. So stay tuned, and we will be getting into the 2003 film Final Destination 2 coming up. Say goodbye, Tom.
Goodbye, too.
Excellent. Take care, everybody.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had 1, maybe 2 craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.